Hello and welcome to Jump Scare, the podcast.
I'm Olivia Cordell.
And I'm Casey Dunn.
And today we're going to talk about yet another scary story idea. I think we mentioned last time, but this is a podcast where we develop the ideas for horror films and other, scary story things. Well, that was dumb.
But we're leaving it in.
Oh, no.
We come up with horror concepts, films, maybe they'll branch into other types of, whatever else people watch. I guess we could pitch a Netflix series at some point.
I mean, probably. We'll probably end up doing that at some point.
It'll be Vines. Vines is our big one.
God, it'll be like it'll be sponsored by or in a collaboration with Black Mirror. It'll be incredible.
Perfect. We're ready. All right.
Anyway, so it's like development hell, but for your ears.
I like it. So let's get started. Olivia, it's your turn.
Yeah, last week or last episode, when I don't know when we're releasing these yet, we heard from Casey a really awesome idea that he had for something that we didn't title. We didn't come up with a working title for it, but that's okay. But it was a really great idea. Today, I have to do one, which makes me super nervous, partly because I chose one that, just has a lot of baggage and history behind it.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so it's not helping me at all not feel nervous. So originally, I came up with this idea in my, I want to say sophomore year of college. So I've been sitting with it for a long time, and I've probably told you about it at some point. And I don't think it's changed at all since I told you about it, because I have gotten absolutely nowhere on it every time I have tried to develop it on my own, brainstorm it on my own, or figure out where to go with it. Nowhere. Mm-hmm. So I was in a screenwriting course with this she was a very experienced teacher, lots of experience, show running, developing scripts, etc. She was also kind of a hard ass. She was the kind of professor who would just shoot down any idea you had. She wanted you to get a lot of experience being shot down when pitching. And I didn't realize this. I was 19, and I'm going into this class I've done great in every writing course I've ever had. I'm going to do great. And the first class, she was like, pitch me an idea right now. And everyone else seemed to have a pitch, and I didn't. I was like, oh, God.
Oh,
so
scary.
I put one out there, and she was like, what else do you have? And I was like, really nothing else after that. That was my... So...
I just spent 10 minutes figuring that one out.
That's all I got.
I got nothing.
So then I did pull another one out that I had also had an inkling of in the back of my mind. And she, again, kind of shot it down. She was slightly less immediate, less of an immediate no than the first one, but she did shoot down basically every idea I had within the concept. She was like, concept, okay, but character, no. Setting, no. This, no. Find a whole new way to do this entire script, but keep the concept.
Young Olivia.
I ended up dropping the class after the second class.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, because I didn't know what to do. Because she just kept having us come in and pitch ideas until we had one that she liked. And I pitched 3 or 4 ideas, and she didn't like any of them. And I kept trying. And so eventually I was just like, this is going to stress me out. Yeah. I'm going to not do this. I'm not going to do this to myself.
That's sophomore year of college.
Yeah, and it was also a course with a lot of seniors and grad students in it. I thought I could swim with the big fishes. I could not.
Oh, man.
So that's where I'm coming from with this one. So I went straight for what scares you, Olivia? Let's do that.
So I'm so ready. I'm going to get into her spirit. I'm calling on her. Do we have the first letter of her last name?
I don't know her last name. I think her first name was Deborah.
Okay, so Mrs. D. We're calling her Mrs. D for today. I'm summoning Mrs. D. So... no.
But this was a professor. We don't call her by her last name. We call her by her first name.
Deborah, no.
Oh.
That's what I'm going to... No. No. No.
It's eerily accurate. Okay, so I'm going to go with the original idea that I had for it before she, struck it all down.
Okay, at the end, I just want to hear rapid fire what the other concepts were, just to get them. But anyways, yes.
So this one, for some background, I, as Olivia Cordell myself, have terrible eyesight. Not the worst, but not great. You know this.
It's true.
It's pretty bad. I have to wear glasses and contacts. And when I'm not wearing them, I often forget that I'm not wearing them because I can just see things well enough that I'm like, I can get by. It's fine. However, there have been times where I've seen things but not been quite sure what they are because I don't have my glasses on and I've forgotten that I'm not wearing my glasses and I'm like, what is that in the corner? And then you put your glasses on and it's like, a jacket with a hat on a hook. One of those things that's casually laying around all the time.
Very true.
So the concept is this. Originally, the concept was this. There is an older woman in her at least mid-60s to late 60s who is losing her eyesight. She has cataracts. She's slowly but surely going blind. And it's fading away in such a way that it's very hard for her to see. But she can still see shapes and things. And ultimately, she knows that eventually she will go blind. And she's hoping, I don't know, that she can get it fixed or something, have an operation to get it fixed in the meantime. However, she needs very thick glasses in order to see. And when she can't, she just sees shapes and blurs. And the film, the way I see it, would include a lot of POV shots from blurry to clear vision, etc. Because when you can't see, especially when your eyesight's that bad, it can be really scary. Because if you lose your glasses or whatever, you're screwed. And so that's basically... So what happens to her is that she lives alone by herself, and she starts to see a shape. Dark shape. And at first she just thinks it's like a shadow. She sees it in the distance and she's like, what's that? And she puts on her glasses and it's gone. And slowly but surely it gets closer and closer to her over the course of many days, many months. She sees this entity following her and growing closer and closer. And all she can see is darkness because she doesn't have her glasses. But when she goes to put her glasses on, it disappears. And so she can never see the thing clearly unless she gets close to it. And she doesn't want to get close to it because it's terrifying. It's this dark, it could be a ghost or a monster, who knows, something that is invisible to those who are able to see clearly, but not to her because she can't see clearly. So it's this juxtaposition of needing to see something, but not being able to with what you have. And so what I was going for with it is this, I'm not really married to this idea, but a metaphor or a thematic idea that it's either her own, I don't know what it is, a symbol for her own age, her own impending death, her own the bleakness of her future, etc. And she sees it looming closer and closer and closer, but can't quite make out what it is. But I'm not married to that idea. And when I pitched this to my professor, she was like, "You'll never sell anything that stars an older woman." And I'm like, "But you're an older woman. Why would you say that? Why are you perpetuating this?" That just made me really angry and sad a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. First off, the hell, Deborah. I know you're a listener, and I'm shook. Okay? I'm pissed. What the fuck are you talking about? That's... older women kick ass.
Yeah.
And they're great actors, and they can hold a fucking film for themselves.
Yeah. Did you see the most recent, I don't know if it was the most recent, it might have been a little older, Insidious movie, where it was like a prequel, I think, about the older woman who's the medium.
Right,
going back to deal with her family trauma and everything.
It was the one with the keys, right?
Yeah, the keys and the voice thing and the monster. It's scary. But yeah, it starred an older woman, and it was badass, and she was great.
Yeah.
I loved it. I was like, I love seeing her in this heroine position.
I think the thing a lot of film people forget is that age means that you've had a lot of time to perfect your craft. Mm-hmm. And so you're getting some of the best acting out there because you have somebody who has years of life experience meeting up with talent and drive. And so those factors in a low budget horror film, those seem like you would reap the benefits.
Oh, yeah,
on that's the producer side of me kicking in is financially, I think you could make a lot of money from this.
And what was the film that you and I watched? The Haunting of, I think it was also a Deborah. Oh, I forgot forgot her last name. I think you and I watched it. It was about the old woman who had Alzheimer's, but also was maybe possessed. And it was a back and forth about whether or not she had Alzheimer's or was possessed. And that was incredible. But it was a bunch of actors you've never seen before and you haven't seen since. Also incredible. But it is this kind of, it's like an untapped demographic within this genre.
Yes.
Sometime along the way, some Hollywood executives got in their heads that people only like watching horror if it's young people getting slaughtered while half naked in the woods.
Well, it's because we're still selling to 13-year-olds who just aren't the makeup of the genre anymore.
Not anymore. Not the audience.
It's not Freddy and Jason anymore.
No.
We're clearly moving into different territory within horror that is scaling older.
Yeah, and there's this idea that you have to make films for a demographic you've already pre-chosen to sell to, not that if you make films starring or featuring a different demographic, the audience will come. Like, that's what we're getting into with so much representation across racial lines and genders and sexualities. But we're not really seeing it as much with age, at least not in these pop culture genres.
Yeah, we're really not. I think the only place that you see sort of older people really getting great roles that are featuring them is either in like the sort of comedy genre or in the Oscar bait. And
definitely.
That's normally foreign films. That's French filmmakers and
or
stuff.
Biopics about usually older white men.
Yeah.
Lincoln.
Hey, I do not stand by Lincoln. I fell asleep in Lincoln.
I didn't
to
watch
be completely honest.
It
was so hard
films.
to watch. It was so boring. Okay. So if that's the film you like, you can tweet to @jumpscare0036 and send your complaints.
Oh, now you said it again. So now we actually have to get this Twitter account.
We'll figure it
set
out.
Up. Oh God.
So the first thing that jumped to my mind was one of the scary things about this, and one of them that I actually don't think I've ever seen in a horror film, which is having like. I have a lot of grandparents. My family is very large.
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of grandparents. And so there is always a fear and a guilt that comes from the fact that I have so many grandparents who I don't live by.
Yeah.
So I can't do anything for them at this point in life. And so, you know, it's very frequent for my stepmother to give me a call, and I'll be talking to her, and she'll say, well, you know, we're just not sure that grandma's going to make it another year. Yeah. And that's been every year of my childhood to adolescence to adulthood.
Classic.
And so, yeah, but I think that is terrifying is the fragility of age. And it's one of those things that you have to come to terms with. And, you know, we've been spared of it mostly so far because, you know, you're only 6 months older than me.
Where were you going to go with that?
I don't know. You just get defensive sometimes when I claim that I'm younger than you.
Well, you are younger than me. It's when you claim that I am, quote unquote, old. That's where I take issue.
That's true. But I think that there is a lot to go with there, which is like if she's trying to run away from this monster, the physical limitations of that.
Yeah, and I'm torn between, on the one hand, like, it would be great to see a badass older woman, like, fighting back. That would be awesome. On the other hand, is the story more about what you can't do? But is that ageist of me to say at, 24 what an older woman can or can't do?
I think that there's a balance here, because somebody knowing their limitations doesn't mean they're not a badass.
Yeah.
So somebody can be struggling. Like, the great thing about horror is the struggle a lot of the time. It is that the fact that all of the odds are weighed against this person and they make it through. And so she could make it through this, and the whole time be fighting her body and be fighting what is happening. I think 60 it's around that age, like, to speak frankly, like, that's when my most recent grandfather who died.
Really? 60 is young.
He was 66. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's terrifying. My mom's 64, and I'm like...
I know, it's scary. It is, that is very scary.
Right?
My grandfather was on a small slope in his backyard at a family get-together where he fell, broke his hip, and was in the hospital and just decided he was good with life and he had done what he had done.
Yeah.
But so I don't think it's ageist necessarily, because ageist is like, oh, she can't do it.
Right.
Or something. Instead, it's, there are physical limitations, and that's just us accepting our humanity.
Yeah. So, what would you change about that premise, if anything? And then, after that, what story-wise can we put in there? What can we make happen?
I don't really have changes.
Rad. Fuck you, Deborah.
Yeah, seriously, Deborah, you were caught up in your own feelings of what the industry should be, and I want you to know it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, Deborah.
That was a moment for Deborah.
That was very considerate. And then from Olivia, you have, fuck you, Deborah.
I feel like you could find the middle ground there and take something away from it, Deborah.
So what can we do with the story,
Okay.
Deborah aside?
Yes. So I think the things to do with it are to let's beat this out a little bit. Let's find where this thing goes, because I think the concept is strong enough that it's like, okay, so what actually happens in this?
Yeah.
What is her journey, and then what are the obstacles or those horror moments that bring her to it? And then I think we can figure out. I'm not totally sold on the metaphor yet.
Okay.
I think that we could find something in there, though.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, right now the metaphor is a million different things.
Exactly.
It's age, it's sight, vision, loneliness, fear. It's everything. It's death. Like, it can be one of those things and be okay, or it can be all of those things and also be okay. It doesn't have to be defined, as long as it can be interpreted. But
I mean, I think one of the central ones that appears to me, at least, is overcoming one's limitations.
Okay.
And so within that struggle, how do you overcome? Like that seems like one of them that could be there centrally and a place to sort of jump off from.
Okay. I mean, unlike with last week where we talked about a more contained situation where the characters are trapped together in a single place, I do like seeing the rest of the world kind of through her eyes, no pun intended, from the get-go. Maybe starting with her at an optometrist appointment in the waiting room, and then in the actual appointment, and getting some prognoses, but without being too, like, scene by scene, more just like quick cuts between little snippets of her day-to-day life.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's a really great montage, just like boom, 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 boom. You jump from these different pieces.
The kind of monotony of her day-to-day, as well as her loneliness, her situation. I think it's important that she's alone. I think it's important that maybe she has family, but they're not there. And
I think you can have some great moments of whatever this thing is being in the background, being like starting to grow into something, just a little bit.
So I don't want it to ever be seen except through her eyes, if that makes sense.
Well, that's what I mean. Is like we can get like maybe she takes off her glasses for a moment, and you just start to notice, like, not even notice it, but it's just planted there.
Yeah.
And like she can like rub her eyes, and maybe it's gone, and she puts them back on.
Right. I think it would be interesting to start out with. Again, you haven't seen Hereditary, but it's a really good example of non-jump scares. And also, sometimes in The Haunting of Hill House, there are several scenes where there are just ghosts in the background and there's no scare involved. But in Hereditary, one of the early scenes, you see the ghost of the grandmother just standing there, and the mother looks at her and she looks back, and the mother turns off and on the lights a few times, and she's still there. And it's like, okay, there's a ghost, and that's just it. Like, it's not like it's scary. It's not, you don't call attention to it in Haunting of Hill House. It's just in the background. And it might be nice to kind of start out that way. So on later viewings,
that's what I mean.
People should watch it multiple times.
Yep.
They'll catch it. But yeah, I think the first time there should be an actual scare is when it moves.
Yes.
Whatever it is, the dark shape in the distance moves. And there are other ways to build out the world and add some more question of whether or not it's in her head. Like, maybe she has a cat, and the cat hisses at it or something, and it's like maybe it is actually there, but I don't know if that's a good addition or not.
Well, what if it affects things as it moves through them?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, it could move through the television, and all of a sudden the television could take on, like, a darker hue a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could move through, like, a music stand, and the music could just slightly alter. And, like, even maybe she doesn't totally notice it, but it's, like, we're through her vision, so we sort of see the shade move through it, and it's like, so it's tuning in the audience to that this is in some way real.
Okay.
Or something.
Interesting. So I was thinking of it more as like a tangible thing.
Oh, okay.
Less
so
of like a ghost.
It's not a ghost or entity.
It's like an entity, but not necessarily. It doesn't have to be something something opaque, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Something tangible.
Interesting.
So like if it, like she's afraid of when it eventually reaches her because it is slowly but surely getting closer because.
Oh man, I just thought about what if it keeps turning off the music?
Ooh.
Like we can see it touching whatever is playing the music, and she keeps going and turning it back on.
Ooh, that'd be creepy.
And so, like, oh man, she's like going through her nightly routine or whatever, and she keeps going into these different rooms, and it keeps turning it off, and she has to keep going back and turning it back on, and maybe she thinks like she's forgetting, like she's like, like what the heck, like not completely sure, and it's like you just see her go through this whole routine where this like shape is there and like keeps turning it off. And again, it could be one of those jump scares, or it could not, like where it never.
And it could be something that pays off later, because again, I think it would be cool to set up the vision thing and the ghost thing or presence separately in the beginning, so you don't realize that they're connected until a big payoff moment. But like you're seeing through her eyes, and like there's little Easter eggs of like, oh, there is a shadow in the background there, and oh, it's in the background of this one, but you can't really tell because it's so far away or it's so close, because it's blurred vision, you can't see clearly. And then simultaneously, as we're going through these monotonous day-to-day things, there are little haunting things, like the music turns off but we don't see anything there, or the cat hisses at a corner and there's nothing there. Things like that keep happening, where she's like, maybe there's a haunt or something, until at some point she takes off her glasses and turns around just as it's right by the music and the music stops, or something like that.
Right.
Or she like, something happens where they fall, like they fall off or something, and at that moment she sees it.
That's like one of the first times, and you see it sort of clearly because she's close enough.
Yeah, and it's got to be scary, whatever it is. I'm picturing this almost spectral Grim Reaper, like scary hands, really tall.
What if she falls then and gets injured, and then that's like one of the first times you get introduced to her family?
Well, okay, that's possible. You could bring it back then later, because I was thinking a solid ending or near ending climax would be if she falls when it's coming after her and she gets hurt, as happens so often with falls, unfortunately. They're really scary, horrible things to happen to older people, and that's when it keeps creeping up and she can't get away from it.
So what if she has a clicker? Like she has one of those, like her family got her a clicker.
After the first time she fell.
I don't want to be like, what if she already has it? So like the first time she falls, she's able to click it.
Yeah.
And so then the rest of the film, sometimes you like focus on where is this clicker.
Right.
And
so she's trying to get to it.
And she can't move to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because like that, like I think one of the things it shows is like the family cares about her a little bit, but not enough to keep visiting her. Like clearly she's isolated. They're just like, don't freaking die on us.
Well, it could be that like she thinks that and she has accepted limitations, which no one wants to do, and like as they get older. I mean, it's something we all have to deal with.
Yeah.
Your knee hurts sometimes, and you're young.
I can't longboard anymore. I'm pathetic.
But you still tried.
I do. I will again. I will keep trying.
You're not going to accept that limitation.
I will not.
But it could be that the first time she falls. She doesn't have the clicker on her. She uses the phone instead to call, but she has seen this thing for the first time, and it's really freaked her out. Next scene, in the hospital, family's there. She's trying to tell them what she saw, and the daughter's like, the doctor says that it could have just, like, you could have hit your head, blah, 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 like, they're ordering an MRI. and she's like, but I saw something and blah, blah, blah. And they don't believe her because it could have just been that she hit her head when she fell. And then her son's there, or her son-in-law, and they're like, we bought you this for a reason. Wear it around your neck. And she's like, oh, I don't need that. And they're like, obviously you do. You fell. And then she continues to not wear it.
Oh, man.
Because she keeps taking it off and leaving it places. And sometimes she's wearing it, sometimes she isn't. And so at the climax, when she's trying to get away from this thing that's getting closer and closer to her, and she falls, and she has to get to it. And whether or not she gets to it is the big suspense moment, like the big building, like, can she get there in time? She's dragging herself along the floor and throwing chairs behind her and trying to stop whatever this thing is that's coming after her. And we don't know if it's corporeal or not. We don't know what it can do when it will reach her. But it's got to be something really scary. So the dread of it is just...
And I think you got to play with the sounds of this thing. Yeah. Like... her knocking the chair down and like this thing just eviscerating it. Like there's just this like this like really intense, like it's destroying these things in its way. Which I think like that's starting to bring me to like this thing is death, or it's this, I almost think like this lobotomy of self.
Ooh. Which is what death is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. And in those last moments, like, I this brings me back to my grandfather, is in, like, that last moment, it's that decision of, do I keep living outside of myself for other people, or as because the fight is to live? Or do I accept death and go on? Go on beyond the veil, or whatever it is. Do I welcome it?
Yeah.
And I think that might be it, is like, at the end of this, her struggle is this literal thing that is...
coming after her, literally.
Yeah, well, and also like this literal beacon, which is survival and a representation of her family, or whatever this thing is demolishing towards her.
Yeah, yeah, and I like, it's... what do you say, a lobotomy of self, the demolition of self, which is what death is. I like the idea of it being simultaneously a corporeal Grim Reaper type being, but also almost a void. Like, it's hungry, it sucks things into it, including sound. Like, it could be really interesting. But so
yeah,
what?
When it gets right into her face, oh man, there's so many cool like this like all of a sudden an absence of sound with this like shimmering upon the edges of sound. Oh man, there's some cool shit.
And there are lots of cool, creepy things that can be done. I thought a lot about in thinking about this concept, but haven't been able to figure out how they could fit into the story, such as at some point she wakes up in the night and thinks that it's still nighttime because it's so dark, and then she puts on her glasses and it's day. And she realizes it's just so close to her. It's
consuming her. Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting.
It's really creepy, but I don't know if I could fit that in at any point. If the thing is getting closer and closer to her slowly, what am I doing where it's suddenly like on top of her?
Okay, so I had this idea a little bit ago, and I just remembered it, which is, what if at some point you think she permanently loses her glasses?
Yeah.
And so it feels like days of her looking for her glasses and then just going through life without them. And within that like little portion, you can see like something wrapping itself around her, or like it's sort of settling in, like as if she's just settling into, this is the way my existence is. Maybe this is leading up towards that final fight or something. But, and then all of a sudden it can feel like, oh, well, it's just been night for a long time. Like, oh, this maybe have just been like one night or something. And then all of a sudden she actually stumbles upon them, puts them on, and it's daytime. And it's like she's been living in this darkness or something.
It could work, but then it also kind of takes away from whether or not this thing is a being. Because then it's more of an atmosphere. Then it's like a darkness.
I was thinking about that. I mean, I think with any of that idea that sort of takes on is like, I mean, and there can be different ways that a creature wants to kill its prey.
Yeah, it's true.
So it can do the like, oh, I'm going to slowly suffocate you to death. Or, okay, I'm sick of it. You're still fighting. I'm going to. And
it could also happen. It could happen after the climax. I mean, the climax could be that she is pulling away from this thing. It's getting closer and closer and closer. She's reaching out for her clicker thing. It's on top of her. It's sucking out her life force, basically. You can hear the sound of it, this horrible deafening. And just as it goes dark, she presses on it and it starts blinking. And then you see her, like, and it could just go dark. Like, it could be dark and you hear the sound of the hospital around her. You hear the beeping and the people talking, but it's all in darkness, all in darkness, all in darkness. And sometimes it almost comes into focus, but doesn't. And you think that it's, just that she's going in and out of consciousness. And then she puts on her glasses and it's daytime. And it could be a creepy back and forth where she takes them off and it's dark. She puts them on and it's light. And to represent that she literally is on death's doorstep or something. And her family is there or whatever finally, and they're all upset, and she makes a choice to live or succumbs to it or whatever. This is all kind of very nebulous, but an idea that I do like, which is blatantly stolen from Harry Potter.
Let's go!
Where they talk about, the three brothers with the three different Deathly Hallows and everything, and the one with the invisibility cloak avoids death for so long that in the end he greets death as an old friend. Yeah. And so seeing her at the end, like, maybe you don't know if she gets out of the hospital, and then finally is like a fade to later. It's like months later, and she's at home, and she has a walker now or a cane now, and she's just making dinner in her kitchen or something, and she's got the music playing in the background, and it stops, and you know that it's still there, and she goes, "Turn it back on," or something.
That's funny.
And it could be kind of funny, but I don't know if that's the right kind of ending for this, but I just think it would be kind of uplifting.
I do love something about that, which is the, like, it goes back to that accepting death, like refusing hospice care.
Yeah.
Which is a frequent thing that somebody will do when they're like, no, I want to die on my own terms. Exactly. I want to die in my own house.
Exactly. And so, like, at that point, she knows it's there. She knows it's coming for her, but she's going to let it be when she says, on her own terms.
I don't support smoking at all, but I do love the idea of her sitting there cooking and just smoking a cigarette and saying, "Turn on the fucking music."
That might be a little out of character, depending on how she's written.
It's totally different, but whatever that feeling is.
Well, because I kind of also like it because then it lends that empowering ending while still having the theme of accepting limitations without it being like, accept it, you're old, go live in a home or whatever. It's like, no, she can accept that she's getting older and that death is coming for her without letting it control her, weaken her, take her life without her say.
No, it's a complete character arc. It's a complete shift of accepting what is happening.
Yeah, because as long as she's running, it's coming after her almost faster and faster. And it's self-destructive at that point as long as she's running away.
Well, and I think that lends itself even more into it taking over all of her peripheries, which is when you try to run from anything you're afraid of, you soak yourself more in it. And it becomes more of you. Because you're focusing so much on it. You're giving so much to it that it becomes more mythic than it ever was before. Yeah.
I think a great way to launch into that climax would be to have the part where she wakes up, thinks it's nighttime, puts on her glasses, realizes it's day, and that's how close it is to her, and she like scrambles out of bed and backs away from it, takes off does like the back and forth thing with her glasses and sees that it's there super close to her and it's coming for her. That's when this like chase scene ensues, the most climactic moment where it's most suspenseful. She falls, hurts herself, breaks a hip, something. She's pulling herself along and it's coming for her and her glasses break. And I
think it's got to rip, like it's got to like grab at her face or something and like take the glasses away.
Okay, yeah. Because then it's, I could see that. And then she's going and running, and then everything we just mentioned where she gets the thing and then she's going in and out of consciousness.
Reaching for it.
And it's there, going in and out of consciousness at the hospital. It could be that she comes to in the hospital and she sees whatever it is behind her children because she doesn't have her glasses on, and they're like crying over her or whatever, and it's there. And at some point she makes the conscious decision to stay. And as it fades out, you think, well, maybe she's dying, maybe she's dead. And then it fades back in and she's not. And she's taken over her own narrative. She's reclaimed her fucking time.
Shots purposely fired at the Babadook. It's a better Babadook ending.
Is that what this is?
Yeah, well, it's that the monster still exists in that regard.
Grief, yeah.
It's just a better way of doing that.
It's true. Oh, the Babadook ending could have been so much better than it was.
Yeah.
But
I really think that that's just a really strong ending.
I think so too. And at first, when I was thinking, I'm like, this is going to be way too cheesy. The moment I said it out loud, I was like, fuck, nah, way better.
It's that our society builds up this anything to do with older women is taboo or something.
Or old age in general.
And
you're just waiting around to die.
It's just so not. Because human beings are fascinating at every level, and they're more fascinating the less they've been dissected. I think that that's just such an obvious thing that anybody in Hollywood, I'm talking to you, Hollywood. Anybody in Hollywood who hasn't learned that lesson is like, it's just naive or stupid.
Yeah. And I like the idea of, we've really fleshed out the ending, but along the way, you're seeing her life, the day-to-day, and maybe you see her looking at going to like social events or something and or maybe getting invited over by neighbors or something, and consistently saying no and isolating herself. She doesn't need other people or whatever. She's fine. And I don't know if there's a way to work that in at the end, that someone comes to the door and she lets them in, and it's like you don't have to see their faces, but you just hear them from the other room. It could be that like the music stops while she's cooking. She says, turn that back on, and then goes over to then someone knocks on the door. She goes over to answer the door, and as it like pulls away and that kind of fades into the blurry in the background, it passes by the music box and it turns itself back on, whatever, right at the end.
That's nice. That's sweet.
Kind of a nice little thing where it's like, yes, she's accepting limitations, but also she's taking steps to help herself.
Yeah.
Which I think is really important, especially in things about old age, because they say that like the number one thing that kills you is loneliness. I mean, that's the number one cause of death, basically.
We're pack animals.
Yeah, we gotta be
heart
with
of
people. That's why when you get older, you just kind of settle down with whoever, because at least you have someone around. I'm kidding.
No, that is actually. I think that is very
it's entirely
true.
true, but like,
yeah, I mean, I think that's why you're listening to this podcast right now. You're very alone and don't want to die.
Exactly, but little do you know that we are going to kill you.
We're slowly gonna murder you, and I hope you enjoy it.
Well, I think that's all for today.
That's it.
I'm actually really happy with how that turned out, and now I have like this renewed energy to like, shit, yeah, I'm gonna write this. Fuck you, Deborah.
Good.
Yeah.
Fuck Deborah. Deborah, die.
Wow. Okay.
Okay,
maybe
that might have been too strong. All right. Well, I've been Casey.
I've been Olivia, but I'm not anymore.
Not anymore. And this is Jump Scare, the podcast.
Okay, I think we're done. Thanks for listening. Make sure you rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes. How do you subscribe, Casey?
You go to the show and you click the button that says subscribe.
It's that easy.
Yeah.
Also, make sure you follow us on social media. You can find us on Twitter at JumpScareThePod because it was too long.
And you can go to Instagram and Jumpscare the Podcast because it wasn't long enough.
What? Hey, Casey.
Yeah?
Boo. Ah!